the number one rule about the Three Body Narrative podcast is you've got to talk about the three body narrative. Welcome to the podcast. We are your hosts, Pradyum, Aaron, and Naeem, and we're here to talk about, uh, well, can we actually really talk about it?
We're not
Technically,
against the rules, yeah, but I mean, considering my PlayStation game tag, I think we can break the rules.
okay, perfect. So we're breaking the rules, and we're here to talk about Fight Club. Cult classic in the 90s. And before we get to our ratings about the movie, let's probably give our listeners and viewers a bit of a synopsis. So, what is Fight Club all about? It's so it's about this depressed man who I think is called the narrator in this movie.
Yeah.
But it's about a depressed man who suffers from insomnia, who meets a soap salesman, Tyler Durden, played by the charismatic Brad Pitt, and they soon find themselves in this really rundown place, which they turn into an underground not boxing, but an underground fighting pit of sorts, or a fighting club, I guess, fight club, obviously. And I guess things go from basic to extreme in less than 100. And joining them on this crazy adventure are people who live mundane lives and think that they want some excitement in their life. That's kind of relatable, isn't it? Anyway, let's talk about the movie. And I guess we'll start with our ratings. And Naeem, I think let's start with yours. What did you make of the movie?
Yeah, so right off the bat, very slow movie. The pacing was a huge issue for me.
Okay.
Honestly, I think to a certain point, I had the movie at like a rating of 4 or 5 out of 10. Like bring it down to probably a two, maybe a 2.5. Like things were moving so slowly, I just couldn't wrap my head around like why the what's driving them all to kind of fight and like
Yeah.
um like it's kind of seems pointless. Like okay, like some of them are looking to find some sort of meaning in life, and like in my head I'm like there are other things you could do to kind of find meaning as opposed to trying to like punch the shit out of the other person or like get beaten yourself to kind of feel something.
Yeah.
So I think I also like kind of texted you at some point asking is this
Is
movie
it just.
supposed to be slow? Is it me or is this movie supposed to be slow? Um so yeah, I think almost to the midpoint I felt like I couldn't go on with the movie. Like
Okay.
I really had it with the movie or such. But then like because we were reviewing it, so I was like, okay, I'm gonna sit through this movie. I have to sit through this movie. And I think the second half kind of turns it or flips it over
Yeah.
drastically, so because a lot changes in the movie in terms of um, showing that there is much larger things at play.
Hmm.
It's not just the most obvious things, or it's not always what it seems like, right? Like there's something else brewing
Yeah.
under everything that's been shown so far, kind of a thing. And I think that really kind of drives the movie forward very well for me. So like from a two to, I think at best I give this movie a 3.5. Reason being the
Out of
pacing in
10.
the, no, out of 5.
Oh,
No,
yeah. Yeah. We're doing it out of 5. I don't know
yeah,
why I said
this is out
10.
of
Yeah.
5, yeah, because I initially
Exactly.
said
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think pacing is still a very big issue for me because I
Yeah.
feel like the way the movie is kind of, I understand they're kind of like trying to give enough uh what do you say time for the character to kind of drive home the factor in terms of what point of his life he's in right now, and like
Hmm.
what is causing everything that's happening around him because of that. But it's very slow. The first half of the movie is extremely slow and painful for me personally. And I think the runtime is at about 2 hours 10 minutes or so, roughly.
Yeah,
About like
something like that.
if
Yeah.
you take about 20 minutes off of the movie, like some parts you chop up and kind of toss away with, I think the pacing becomes much better. And I think
Okay.
I would enjoy the movie a lot more then and drive it up to a 4 as well in that case. But as things stand, it's a 3.5 out of 5, which is, I think, in comparison to what the IMDb rating is at, I think it's close to a 9 out of 10. I
Really?
think, yeah, I think so. It
Because
was very
honestly,
strange.
no, honestly, I mean, when the movie was released, like you were right in there with what the critics thought. So yeah, it's actually an 8.8. Damn. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So yeah, my like I love the second half of the movie. I love. I don't know if we kind of start talking about that right away. So I'll
Yeah.
leave it once you guys have all
Correct.
the you have your ratings out of the way, kind of a thing. But yeah, if the pacing or the runtime was a little lower, with some parts that were chopped off, I think I the score could go up to a 4 for me. So for me, this movie is about two parts. The first half was barely watchable, and the second half is like really intense and like really
Yeah.
um uh, like really good. I think what would have helped for me is that had I watched this movie probably earlier in my life, like around um maybe like what, this came out early 2000s, right?
I thought 98 or something, but yeah,
99, right?
99.
99.
Yeah,
Okay.
99.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. So if I had watched it probably when I was in school, the surprise factor would have hit me at the time when it was supposed to hit me.
Yeah.
I think the surprise factor just kind of like
Misses.
just a while back, I kind of
Okay.
like start realizing, okay, this is what's happening. I
Oh,
think this
I'm
is what's
interested to
happening.
hearing that. Okay,
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
I'm very, very keen on hearing that. Okay,
Cool.
so
So
Aaron, I think you should go next because I'm the one who probably recommended it. So I want to save mine for the end. So probably just go ahead with what your opinions are.
Aaron, have you watched this movie before though, or is this the first time you're watching it?
No, I did watch it before.
Ah, okay.
Um, yeah. Uh, yeah, I think my rating would be quite similar to Naeem in saying that I think 3.5 or something like that. Reason being is, again, I think, like you mentioned, kind of very difficult to get into the movie to start with. Eventually, there are things that kind of pique your interest, and you're like, that gets you going to kind of get you through the entirety of the movie. I think the redeeming qualities would have to be the acting, because I think
Mm,
you've got some really big names over here who've done a great job to kind of
Yeah.
uh, portray the entrance. What is the right word?
intrinsic. Intrinsic.
Uh, I don't know. But yeah, the quirkiness of their
Yeah.
respective characters and stuff like that, where they've done a really good job of kind of putting that across, especially Brad Pitt and the way he has done his thing. And yeah, it was a really good movie to watch. I think in the end, I, the one thing that also I think, like Naeem said, I think if you watched it when the movie came out or closer to when it
Mm,
came out, I think some of the visuals back then would have been like, oh wow, and that would have helped you get through the movie.
yeah.
But just watching it so so much later on, you kind of know that it's not the most realistic kind of visuals and stuff like that way, and so I think that could potentially put people off, and you're like, the details aren't really there for, compared to movies that you watch nowadays. So yeah, I think the movie hasn't aged quite as well as you would have hoped, but yeah,
Mm.
it's still a decent watch, I guess.
Yeah. I think it probably won't surprise you. Okay. So my rating. Let's just get that out of the way. Is a 4. Uh, I think it has lost some of its charm. And these kind of things do happen when there is a big plot twist at the end or a change, right? Like going into it, I watched it first in 2010s, right? Somebody had the DVD, or late 2000s. So somebody had the DVD. I think my uncle or aunt had the DVD, and they said, "Okay, let's watch it." And at that time, I would have been in high school or just about, yeah, around that time, and a lot of things, blew my mind. I think obviously it was the intriguing character of Brad Pitt, this really loudmouth, like crass, didn't care what was happening kind of guy who meets Edward Norton. I think acting wise, you couldn't have asked for more in terms of the sort of star cast that you had. What I like watching it right now, which is, I think since then I've only watched maybe once after my first time, and this was probably the second time only. But catching little Easter eggs here and there that was quite nice, and that's why my rating still stands a little high. Like catching things that I didn't catch before, and I think that gave me a lot of cool insight into the movie. Uh, yeah, I do agree. I wouldn't lie by saying, like, when you ask me, Naeem, that is it supposed to be slow? Yeah, the first half is slow. It's also representative of the character. He is meant to be this really dull, depressing, sorrowful, morose character. And so I think that's how it kind of plays out until, I guess, maybe halfway when they actually start building up on the Fight Club. And even the Fight Club, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that really don't get moving as much. You're like, okay, the people coming, people fighting, you have all of this, but what is the end goal? And when that starts getting unveiled, is when things really pick up. And I said, okay, just stick with it because that's where it happens. I think a lot of interesting characters, a lot of intriguing stuff. Uh, I think a movie which I don't know if it's appropriate to watch very early on as well. I think if I caught it when it actually released, I don't think it would have been appropriate back then. That would have been 7 or 8. That wouldn't have been great. I think some of the visuals, like you said, were pretty cool, pretty neat at that point of time. Also, the plot twist that eventually happens, right? I think not a lot of movies could successfully pull off plot twists back then at that point. Now we're into this age where so many things are hidden under wraps, and so many movies have already come out where I think now if I watch like most of the movies, the thing was most of the time it goes into thinking, oh, is this the guy who's killed? Is this the person? Is this the plot twist? And all that. Back then, when I watched it, I didn't even know such a plot twist would happen or something, right? So when it did happen, it was like, oh my god, like this is insane. And yeah, I think it definitely has its taste, though. I'm not gonna lie, it's not meant for everyone.
Yeah.
I think the things that they do and the things that they show is not really. I like Brad Pitt's side jobs are not exactly for the faint-hearted, right? Especially the theater role,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, or the waiter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the soap thing was a revelation for me because until then I didn't know what the soap actually could be used for. So I was like, oh, okay, soap bars, interesting. So a lot of things that I really liked. I think again while watching it, yes, I did find myself skipping through a lot of things because I was like, I've already seen this and all that. But at the same time, there were quirky things. Like I think I've already given my rating, so we'll probably move into this. But if you noticed it during the first half, especially after he meets, I don't know if it's after he meets or even before he meets Brad Pitt, there are flashes of Brad Pitt on the screen. There
Yeah.
are images
Yeah.
of Brad Pitt that pop up here and there,
Oh,
and
Yeah.
yeah.
in the which
It
is quite
Brad Pitt.
definitely, yeah, it definitely before he meets him, you see glimpses and flashes of
and I thought
his
that was
character.
Yeah.
brilliant.
Okay, so that's the thing, right? Like when that was happening, because I was watching this old version of this movie.
Yeah,
I was not sure if it's some sort of a glitch that was
I was
happening, or
hoping that was the case. Yes,
if the
okay.
movie was actually doing it, and especially like once you see it a couple of times, you see it at the end as well. There's like sudden picture that just pops up, and you're like, okay, cool. This is definitely what the movie meant for it to be like, and
Yeah.
the reasoning behind is basically the reveal in itself.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we need to get that kind of
Yeah, let's
out
get that
the
out of
way.
the way. So,
Out of the way,
spoiler
yeah.
alert, if anyone's not watched it or is watching, I think you probably should go watch it. Even a 3.5 out of 5 or 4 out of 5 is still a good rating, despite whatever it is. So, do go watch it, but spoiler alert for anyone who is listening or watching. So, let's get the big reveal out of the way,
Yeah.
where
So
the narrator is Tyler Durden.
the narrator, which is Edward Norton, is
Yeah.
basically suffering from split personality, or
Something
dual
like that. Yeah.
dual
Yeah, dual
personalities, right?
personality.
And his the person he thinks he's working with, Tyler Durden, is actually no one but himself.
Yeah.
It's when his consciousness is away from his body that he kind of meets Tyler Durden, I suppose. That's how I see it. It's like his consciousness is taking a side switch, but
Yeah.
is not completely phased out. He's still has some sort of consciousness in there, but does not realize that it's himself who's doing those
So his
certain
consciousness is watching the
watching. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
other side of him come out, right? Which is
Yeah.
great because honestly, we've seen a lot of these dual personality movies and shows happen in the recent
Yeah.
past. And a lot of it is you can find out easily because the other consciousness really doesn't interact with anybody else.
Right.
Right. So for example, I think of Dexter season 6, or I think of
I think for me it was mostly like Venom was coming into mind. I just kept thinking of Eddie Brock and Venom switching places within, but more
Sure.
so that they kind of keep talking to each other within this thing, but it's never translated in a way where like it's shown like this. Like that's how it is. Basically, someone's tapping out in a way and kind of taking the side seat and
Yeah.
watching what's happening when the other person is doing it. In
Yeah.
certain cases where they realize what's actually happening, but as opposed to like
Again,
in
I watched this quite early, so
yeah.
I didn't have this sort of insight. But when I watched it recently, I did realize like, shit, he really doesn't like Martha, what?
Martha,
Not
I think her name is.
Martha, yeah, yeah, Helena Bonham Carter,
Yeah,
her
yeah.
character, yeah.
I was pleased to see her in the role. I was like, wow, damn, familiar face.
Anil or something, right? I don't know.
No, Marla,
Not
Marla.
Martha.
not
Marla.
Martha.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Too many Marthas already going around, but Marla. So Marla, when obviously she's having a relationship with Brad Pitt, or basically she's getting banged by Brad Pitt, and then she doesn't get to meet him, or he tells Edward Norton not to talk about him to her, and she has a lot of emotion when talking to Edward Norton and all that. So that's something I pick up when I've grown up and I've seen a lot of those stuff. But back as a kid, I didn't really pick up on all those details, which is cool. I think for me, the reveal worked predominantly because I didn't see it coming with the fact that Brad Pitt was interacting with the others.
Okay, so yeah, in the movie, so that's the thing, right? Like I said, it depends on when you watch this movie, and
Yeah.
because you've been exposed to so much media over time, and certain things have had like these kind of things happen. You kind of used to some sort of surprises being thrown your way, and I think it kind of like these days unknowingly you're always looking for these kind of bits and pieces being planted there, here and there, and kind of. So I think the first instance of this is immediately the first time he sleeps with her,
Yeah.
Marla, and you've got this hallucination of uh, this thing happening, right? So
Yeah. A
and
naked
then
Helena
I
Bonham
think
Carter.
if like the initial inkling there was probably she slept with him first and then went and slept with Tyler Durden. Okay, but like I think it's her behavior with him within that uh like first encounter right after this thing that
Yeah.
you kind of feel something's off. So okay, you get this inkling of maybe, like I feel like there's something happening where maybe this is his hallucination. The only thing is, like, that was the first time I felt it. Like, okay,
Okay.
maybe it's like
Yeah.
he's imagining this and he's actually doing this. But then the things that follow in terms of him so physically being present and doing things while what's Norton's character's name?
The narrator is just the
The
narrator. He
narrator.
doesn't
Okay,
have, yeah.
okay,
I
okay.
don't think
So,
he has.
like when he's there, it feels. Then I'm thinking, okay, no, I maybe I'm just overthinking it, and
Yeah.
probably not. So they do a decent job in terms of throwing you off from that perspective, like doing things which you think, like especially when the fights are happening, right? And you're like, I don't think like a split personality or like someone who's hallucinating. At this point, I'm not thinking more of split personality. I'm thinking more of like hallucinations, right? Like he's doing it and he's just hallucinating that there's someone else is doing it, kind of a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Whereas in this, the like, I think eventually at a point where it becomes extremely obvious is when they kind of I think he's having a speech. No,
I think that's when
Ah,
Bob dies, and
when
then,
no, no, when he's in the basement,
yeah.
he's talking. Tyler Durden is in the basement,
Yeah.
and he's standing up there, and he's having a conversation, I think, with Marla.
Huh.
Uh, and he keeps telling,
Oh,
"I told you not to talk to her,"
yes.
right?
Yes.
Like, and stuff like that. And then I'm like, "There's no way he's talking to her so loudly, and she can't hear him."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, right. So
Yeah.
like, I'm like, okay, definitely, like this is like complete hallucination. There's something off with this person, kind of a thing.
Yeah.
Which eventually, then I think, um, when does he realize it? That's what I'm trying to kind of
He
figure
realizes
out.
it only at the hotel room, right? That's when he,
Is that it?
after, yeah, because,
When he starts going looking for him, right? Like,
yeah, and then he tells Marla, like, he's not here, Tyler isn't here. And then she's like, the hell is wrong with you? And then I think he then asks everyone, right? Like, who am I? Who asked you? And then everyone's like, you told me not to talk
yeah,
about Project Mayhem.
yeah.
There's a guy in the bar with that Willy
Weird.
Wonka,
Yeah,
that neck
yeah,
brace.
yeah,
So I
yeah.
think, I mean, Aaron, I want to get your thought because you also watched the movie earlier. Like, I
Aaron,
guess.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think similar to you, I think I did not pick up on a lot of the subtle or whatever, however you want to put it, but like the subtle details that were in the movie, there were so many of them that now when you rewatch it, you're like, maybe I was better off not picking up on it back then. But
Yeah.
yeah, I think in a lot of ways, like Naeem said, the way they kind of try to throw you off so that you're not throughout the movies thinking that, oh, okay, this is what is going to happen or this is where
Yeah.
we're kind of leading to, is quite nice. And I think uh, because there were so many, I won't say so many, but because of the twists and turns in the movie, you kind of overthink it to this point where you yourself convince yourself that no, that's not going to happen, or no, that's not the case, kind of thing. So that was quite nice, and it was also quite nice to have a movie that kind of gets you thinking about what's happening in the movie. Where I think these days there are a few that do that, but I think most of them you're just kind of just watching from start to end, and you're like, "Oh, okay, that's the movie." But yeah, it was quite nice to have so many different interesting characters where you're kind of trying to suss them out as well as trying to kind of figure out what the whole movie plot was, kind of. So yeah.
Yeah. I have to say though that the first half, Edward Norton kind of spoke to the working person in me right now, showing how someone is so living this mundane life in this house where he talks about his full house being an IKEA catalog or an IKEA catalog, right?
Yeah.
And that's all his life is, like, look, browsing through.
Though Though one thing is like, I mean, I know you mentioned it. I kind of breezed over his name, but I mean, just the quality in his acting, and you kind of like, where did the guy disappear after those couple of movies and stuff? But yeah, I mean, he did an amazing job in the movie, and I think that had to be said. I think
Who are we talking
really
about?
good
Edward
acting.
Norton.
Edward
Norton.
Norton.
Okay.
Yeah, I think for a while after a few movies, like I think there's his breakout performance, which we have to review maybe for the next season. But yeah, you're right. I think only off late he's come in a lot of those Wes Anderson sort of movies. But yeah, I think I've never been disappointed in a Edward Norton performance. Honestly, I think he's been
Yeah,
insanely good. And yeah, I think, but that spoke like obviously his life where he's always flipping through through catalog magazines instead of what I suppose a teenage kid would flip through, and then his whole house being this catalog of IKEA stuff, which again, for someone who has had furniture in a house like that, that's exactly what I've done. To a place where then he goes to a job which he really doesn't like, which fortunately I don't. I really like my job. To anyone listening, I do like my job. Please, please, I really do. But I've had situations in the past like that, and where a boss has been very annoying, and it kind of honestly it gave me, you know what vibes, that whole office scene. uh there's a scene in Incredibles where
Yeah.
Mr. Incredible and his
Yeah.
boss has that fight or whatever in his office, and he's getting pissed off about it. So that gave me that vibe because it's got the same sort of color tone and everything. But honestly, yeah, the first half really spoke to me. This guy living in a one-bedroom house condo, which blows up. My God, that's insane. The fact that it lights up.
Yeah. So
Which
to that
also, by
point,
the way,
okay. Question:
one, just one.
Did any of you at that point think that he blows up the apartment initially?
Uh, yeah, kind of. I mean, you hear a lot of like arson and insurance kind of thing, and he didn't really seem bothered about it. So I don't know whether I think, yeah, maybe a part of me, but not overly. Like I just
No.
thought it
So
was a mistake.
I definitely thought it was him, like
Yeah,
himself.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
like
yeah.
to this point, not that it was a split personality. I was like, he's just so done with his life, and
Hmm.
I don't know what he feels. He just wants to like spice it up or something for some reason, and he just blows it up for whatever this thing. So I was like, in and what adds more value to it is when he's on the call with the detective and he asks if he's a suspect,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
yeah,
I
yeah.
was like, okay, cool. So yeah, maybe like
Way to
yeah,
divert suspicion you by asking the question, "Am I a
yeah,
suspect?"
yeah.
I thought it was an accident at first. I'm not gonna lie. I think I watching it when I was a whatever teenager. I thought it was an accident. But a question though. No, but honestly, another thing before that. But the gas cylinder thing is one reason, and that scene is one reason why I always turn off my gas cylinder before I leave anywhere. Right? I've seen that movie. I've seen what it does. I don't want to come back to my apartment and see my stuff lying on the floor. Um, so that's why I always turn off the gas cylinder. But so, do you guys think? See, we obviously see Tyler in the airport take that hot car, steal someone else's car, by the way, and drive off. So, do you think he's the one who goes, sets up the whole house to to blast off, and then his normal personality kind of shuffles back and comes around, and then notices that his house is done? Or do you think he's planned this in advance that before he travels, he opens up the gas and lets it, and obviously the refrigerator thing will anyway ignite, so that's got nothing to do with planning there.
I think this is pre-planned. I think his personality is very far ahead in terms of planning. He does not do things last minute. So it's not like he's on his way and suddenly like the other personality switches over and he's like, oh wait, I want to do this before we leave, kind of a thing. I think this
Yeah,
is all like, okay, this is how I'm gonna trickle some effect. We need to bring certain changes into his life, and we can only do this by doing XYZ, whatever. And that is the first piece or first move in the chess game that they're playing with him or whatever. Like, I think the eventual goal obviously is for the subconscious or the other personality to take over completely of the said body or whatever it is, right? And I think that first the spark comes from basically like planning everything and like having everything. I think Tyler Durden is extremely smart and has everything planned out from a perspective. Like, it's commendable to like say that with all the people that he interacts with, he manages to kind of put them in a place where they cannot reveal the truth to the actual consciousness of Edward Norton's character, the narrator, basically, right? So it's very interesting to see that, and like to the point where it was getting frustrating, like the Project Mayhem thing, like okay, like we cannot speak about it and stuff like that. Like, it felt like a huge cult of sorts and stuff like that. And
well,
like,
it is,
you guys are normal.
yeah.
It is, yeah. I mean, yeah, but like you don't realize that until like you see certain things like really going up, like when they start like really vandalizing things and stuff like that, and you're like, okay, this is not a joke anymore. It's not about a underground basement where a fight is happening and people are trying to just
blow off steam,
release some stress or whatever. So yeah, I mean, honestly, like, this movie is a story of two halves. The first half is terrible, and honestly, if it wasn't for this review, I wouldn't have sat through the movie. I don't think I had the patience for it. But I mean, I'm glad you kind of like
pushed it
the slow burn. It literally felt like that acid that he puts on his hand.
Yeah.
It was being poured over me, and I had to withstand it before I could like numb the pain or whatever. And the second half felt much better. The pacing was obviously the reveal helps a lot, because then there's very little time left between
the reveal and the end.
The like him.
It escalates,
but like understanding what he needs to do, kind of either stop or de-escalate or etc. Like what actions need to be taken within that, and kind of realizing you have to rush through.
So he owns that abandoned, rundown house, right? That's what I think he says, or that's what Tyler says at the end.
I think so. I'm not sure.
Because he's like, you own the house. He's like, no, the house under your name. I think that's what happens.
I think that's what he says. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's interesting to see what all he's planned. I want to understand, because there are layers to this. Because I mean, this does seem on paper to be just a fight against capitalism and taking down the man, right? Because that's what they're doing with this whole Project Mayhem thing. But Edward Norton, like, what's the reason for building or creating Tyler Durden? Is he fed up with life that he wants to kind of break out, and Tyler is his way of breaking out? Is Edward Norton fed up of capitalism and all that whole thing of jobs and buying money, and that's a way of sticking it to the man? Is he going through some repressed sexual something where he releases it through Tyler Durden? There's so many things. Or is it all of the above? I mean, it's crazy to think what is the actual, because we really don't know. He also doesn't know. He just knows that he's created this personality at the end. But I know Tyler, I think Brad Pitt does say, like, I am what you are not, or what you can't do. But what is the actual goal? What is the idea here?
Yeah. Unlike the current set of movies, I think there are no prequel series here to kind of add more into the character of Edward Norton or the narrator here. So there's no way to really tell where a lot of this stems from. From a perspective of sexuality or like a sexual approach, etc., I think he's just not confident enough to kind of do the things that he really wants to do. So I think that's where that stems out of. The probably has seen a lot in terms of poverty, perhaps, even if it's not him per se, but seen it around kind of a thing, and people kind of being defeated by the system of like the banking system and how things work, and how a lot of it works against the common man and things like that, and probably kind of having the whole idea to kind of blow that away from stemming from that. And I think aggressive nature perhaps is all like the frustrations of like holding anything and everything that someone who's superior to him,
Yeah.
in whether in job or like other aspects, having to kind of like constantly withstand that kind of bullish attitude. Perhaps that's where it sort of comes from. Like these are all interpretations, not
Yeah,
interpretations,
it
but
has
like
to
my
be, right? Because
perception of.
we really, yeah, exactly.
We don't
No,
know what exactly drives him per se, or like drives him to the point where he decides. I mean, not decide. He doesn't decide, but like he creates unknowingly
yeah,
another personality within him to kind of express everything that's kind of buried deep down.
fair. Um, what would you guys do if you had an underground basement?
If I
Stay
had an
out of it.
underground,
Sorry,
stay out of,
stay out of it.
Stay out of
stay.
it.
Yeah.
What are you saying, Aaron? I would split it into two. One, like a major theater for like some real good movie,
Uh-huh.
deck it up with some top tech technology, have all the friends over, turn it into like a proper gaming slash movie marathon situation of type, and probably have like a separate screen for like sim racing, etc., etc. And then the second
Oh,
half would be more of like a indoor cricket football kind of a setup.
how big is your basement, dude?
I don't know, man. You just said
I
underground basement.
I changed my answer, Friday. I'll get Naeem to invest in mine.
Uh,
Yeah, exactly.
so
Yeah,
yeah, I mean, like, if I could, that's probably what I would do
that's
for
the
sure.
ideal one.
Yeah,
Yeah, if
yeah.
you had this, it was quite a big house. I know it's abandoned, and oh my god, some of the water situation. I don't know how anyone could live in there, but
It was,
it was.
but it was so bad, like the situation where he is from and where he
Yeah,
goes and stays. And I'm like, no matter how depressed I might be in life, I don't think I'm gonna like go down that way of like being in an unsanitized, place where it's like, forget about unsanitized. It's just, you can't live in that place. How do you live in that place? One scrape
yeah.
and you're probably dead in a few weeks.
No, also, but like, okay, I mean, watching it in the first place, I'm like, there's no way I'm calling up the random person I met on a plane to stay
Yeah,
with. Then
yeah.
obviously you realize that he's actually calling himself, right? So it's essentially him taking himself to where he actually stays, or where he's bought this abandoned house. So, but a few other stuff, pretty decent, you know, side cast in a way, or side characters where you've got you know decent movie stars or decent well-known people playing characters. So you had Bob, who was played by Meatloaf, who's the big singer.
Yeah.
um you had one of the other guys in the crew the one who talks about how Bob was killed. He's from the show called Mindhunter, but I've also seen him in some other show or movie, so I'm not sure where exactly he is. And of course, you had a very, very blonde, very unrecognizable Jared Leto,
Yeah,
which
yeah.
is
That
insane.
yeah, yeah. That was nice to see. I was like, wow, some familiar faces. Like,
Yeah. So, I mean, back then, yeah, Jared Leto was probably not even a household name, or didn't, no, probably, I don't even think he's, yeah, I mean, Jared Leto, I don't even know if he started 30 Seconds to Mars before this. It was pretty early. Did he?
I just googled it. I thought it was early 2000s as well, but apparently 98 is when he.
Oh, so then a year before this. Okay, so he just about started. So I'm not saying still, I don't think you'd have had many concerts or anything in the first year. So not bad, but they had I think the cast or the side cast was pretty cool as well. But overall, yeah, I can't think of anything. I mean, anything else that we're missing out on in terms of. Oh, yeah, by the way, I next time anyone asks you that they have this dual identity, just tell them to shoot themselves in the throat, which I have no clue how he survived that
Oh,
damn
yeah,
thing.
yeah. That was crazy, by the way. Yeah, no joke. Like, I mean, even at the end, I was like, is he still like hallucinating or like what the hell? How does he survive like a shot to his, like, I think the left side of his cheekbone or something,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Like,
because
it
he's
goes
like,
past.
yeah, it essentially here, and then you could see the blood dripping here.
Yeah, okay, but question, okay? Like, it's all in the head. So how does a shot through this thing kind of defeat Tyler Durden? Or is it just the kind of pain he feels kind of kills Durden in that case?
I would have thought he'd shoot himself, and that just ends everything. But yeah, I've never got that bit where he shoots the side of his cheek and it kills him.
No, because the moment when he put the gun in, I thought that's what he was going for. Like he wanted to blow his brains out because
Yeah, that's where
that's
Tyler
where the
was.
problem is. Like he lives there, kind of a thing. So then to eventually have him kind of just dissolve away or like fade away
Oh, I
with a
mean,
shot.
Tyler has a bullet on the back of his head. That's
Is
when
it?
he's yeah.
Oh, oh.
Yep.
How does that
Yes.
work?
So I don't know. So apparently, like when he shoots him, you can see they have a back shot of a rear shot of Brad Pitt, and there is a.
Yeah, now that you say it, I do recall. Yeah.
It's very dark. You don't really get to see, but you see little blood, and then he smokes it out and he
Yeah.
dies. Yeah,
But okay,
I
so
I don't get it because honestly, what I felt watching even the second time was when he shoots himself, he's obviously asking then for a tissue to hold it, right? You have to
yeah.
cauterize the damn thing. So, but he manages to speak,
Hmm.
right? Because sometimes it's croaky and then sometimes his voice is normal. So for me, it became like, did he just like dream shooting himself and killing his not subconscious or
Okay,
something like
so that was my thought process. I thought
yeah
like what he's doing is he's got empty shell of guns, or like there's no bullets per se,
yeah yeah yeah
but the
yeah
concept of him shooting is like it will be enough to kind of get the subconscious or the other personality to go away. But that does not sit with the whole this thing of other people saying that guy is one tough dude or whatever, like, or trying
yeah
to kind of this thing. So there's like, okay, no, that does not sit or does not work. So I'm not quite sure like what I, I think it's about symbolism or whatever you want to call it from
yeah
that perspective. I think that's what they're trying to go for. And uh, like, but it's not, it doesn't sit well with me that's how, like, okay, like this guy Tyler Durden's been like 10 steps or 100 steps ahead of this guy, has no clue and stuff like that, and suddenly falls to his thing of being shot from here or whatever, or not being
yeah
shot at all, and
yeah
and just like kind of dissolving away.
vanishing yeah
Because yeah, because until that point he's almost assumed control of the actual body.
correct yeah it's I didn't get that part the first time I watched it. I didn't get that part the second time I watched it. I just kind of assumed that that's his way of killing it. And also, I mean, at the end, technically the bad guys win. But
Yeah,
Mm.
I mean,
I
with all the
mean,
building.
buildings collapsing. I
Yeah,
mean, again, I'm sure there's symbolism that that's capitalism crumbling
collapsing,
down,
absolutely.
collapsing.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
and these two
uh
are watching the. But I also was a little scared for Marla when he tells her them to go and grab her or something like that. Just turns out that he wants her eventually to come and witness Project Mayhem. Yeah, I uh, I think there were a lot of things, a lot of symbolism in the movie, a lot of layers. But I agree. I think that it is a slow burn. I think these movies too it did take time to kind of blend in, and it isn't fast paced and quick paced. Editing also felt like it made you want to give up, but then later bring yourself out of it. And
but that's also the strange part. Like, I think initially this movie was battered by the critics, if I'm not
yeah,
wrong.
yeah,
And from what I know about the critics love these kind of movies that kind of tend to have like a slow burn, and like Shape of Water, I think, is one of the best
But
examples that I can
I
think of.
think what
That
they
was
didn't like was
won the Oscars, or was
yeah, it did.
yeah, and like to think that the critics didn't see what I don't know how bad they
So
rated the movie, of
I
course.
think it was more on the profanity and the sort of the
Okay.
way it was shown and the depiction of this really crass looking dude who does pornographic stuff in family movies, which was hilarious. I love the expression on the family's faces. Like that's exactly what anyone would do. Like you're like, oh, did anyone see that? Or being a waiter and pissing in your soup, which again is
Yeah.
during that time there was a lot of rumors that people would do that, spit in your food if you didn't tip them, if you're rude to a waiter. Never. That's why people say never piss off a waiter.
Waiter, yeah, they do say that. Because I think even
So
now you shouldn't.
yeah, never piss a waiter because they will piss on you or piss in your food. So I think yeah, I didn't get it. I watched it, like I said, I'm watching it back as a kid. I really loved it, and I think that was because I didn't know Aaron had watched it earlier, but I knew you didn't, and I wanted someone to experience that whole thing of the twist.
Yeah.
Because
I think the
for
first
me,
time you suggested this movie was right after school or something. I think we were in
yeah,
probably college back then or something, which is like almost over a decade ago.
yeah,
But I never got around to it. I had it with me, but I never got around to watching it.
yeah.
Um,
So it had
so
all it took was getting you guys to start a podcast, and
yeah, all
voila.
it took. Yeah.
Now we'll watch some of the TV show. Now to catch up on some shows and movies which have been pushing it on you guys. So let's see. Gunda was one. So
Oh my God, Gunda, fantastic, absolutely, no doubt.
but overall I think yeah, it's if anyone watching it, I think this was the reason I did push it on people and I did recommend it was because this was one of the bigger plot twists which really sort of took me by surprise and really stuck with me. There are a few more other ones which I'll come to in time. I won't tell you which ones because then you're looking for something. But I'll give you those movies later.
This is
Where
one of those movies that I can never think of going back to, though. Like,
it
even though
is
it
it
kind
is
of
yeah.
becomes like a 3.5 for me because it's the second half of it. Is this the first half is so bad I cannot like kind of
No,
sit
but
through
more than
and
that, these kind of movies are very difficult to have rewatches because you already know
already know the
unless there were a lot of Easter eggs where, like I said, I watched it as a kid, so now watching it back like 10 years later, there were things that I probably didn't catch back then, which I saw and I was like, oh, it's intriguing layers that they've done. But these kind of movies very difficult to because you already in the back of your mind know, right? It's like it's crazy how the mind works. Like you can't forget about it because the moment you start watching it, even if it's been 20 years, the moment you start watching, you're like, oh shit, this one happened. Oh, this is the killer. This is how it all happens. So it all connects back. So memory works in fun ways. But yeah, we spoke about it once. We shall never speak about this movie ever again. Sorry for breaking rule number one, but here we are with the end of our review of Fight Club. Thank you all to those of you who are listening to us on Spotify. Go check out our YouTube channel. If you're watching this on YouTube, you can go listen to this on Spotify when you're on the go. Very convenient. And yeah, don't forget to hit a like, share, subscribe, leave a comment. Let us know what you guys thought of the plot twist when you watched it the first time. What are your thoughts on the movie? We'd love to hear from you as well. Also, probably don't give any spoilers. If you are commenting, don't give any spoilers as to what other movies have plot twists because we might be covering that. And I don't want, if one of us hasn't watched it, we don't want to sort of know because I think going into watching a movie, knowing that there is going to be a plot twist ruins it. Like you're looking for something that's going to give way later on. But I guess that's about it for our review of Fight Club. We'll catch you all soon. See you.